Tina, hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
Good morning. It's early for me here. I'm in Washington and it's cloudy, and you're in.
I'm in Idaho. It's been cloudy, but today we have some sun.
Oh, so
Kind of,
nice.
kind of lucky today.
Yeah. So we're excited to be here. We are both life coaches, and I think, hey, we met in September at a retreat, right?
We did.
I
We knew
think,
each other before that, but we met in person.
yes, we
It
met
was
in
actually like
person.
the beginning of October.
Yes,
Yep.
it was. Oh, yeah, it was the beginning of October.
Yeah,
Yes. And so once we started talking, we realized that we have so much in common.
we do.
And I coach women whose adult children have left the church. And Tina?
And I coach mothers or parents who have an LGBTQ child, mainly LDS or Christian based parents. Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine when you say that, it doesn't sound like we have anything in common at all with that. But when you really start looking at it, we have a lot in common.
Yeah. Well, the people that I talk to, most of their kids do end up leaving the church at some point. It's pretty common for those kids to leave the church. And it's really not uncommon for the parents to have questions themselves too, and be questioning the church's teachings in that way too. But today, we are going to talk about what happens to you when your child leaves the church, or is
Yeah.
at least thinking about leaving the church.
Yes. Because because that is what we have in common. I have three children that have left the church. One left right after high school, and the other two left after, um, for one of them, a mission, and for both of them, temple marriages. So that has been something to really work through for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have four kids. So my son that is gay, um, I wouldn't say he's left his relationship with God, but he doesn't have a really a substantial relationship with the church anymore.
Mhm.
And I have three daughters who are each in their own stage of different types of feelings and thoughts about the church. And I would say they're probably all in each a different place with regards to their activity and their thoughts about being a member of the church.
Yeah, it's interesting because of the I've got one daughter that I'm not really clear on what all of her things are. She doesn't talk about it at all. And so I don't have any idea if she still believes in God or not. Um, but the other two that have talked more, they don't they don't feel like they belong. They don't feel affiliated with the church anymore at all. So
Mhm.
they don't feel like that's part of their life.
Yeah.
Although it's been interesting because all of them appreciate what they learned by being raised in the church.
Yeah. So how would you say that you came to want to help women whose kids have left the church? What brought you to that point?
Tina, that's actually really interesting because it was not an easy decision. I took coach training. Uh, I I can't remember how many years ago. I think it's getting to be close to 3 years ago now. And from the minute that I decided to be a coach, I knew exactly who I wanted to work with. And I felt like that was revelation from God, that I was clear. All people around me, as they were trying to decide, they were going in and out. And for me, it was just clear. I want to work with empty nesters whose kids have left home and now they don't know what they want for themselves. And I felt very comfortable there. And the thing is I felt so comfortable there that I wasn't seeing any big problems with it. I had a hard time addressing it in terms of what is their big problem. And so I've kind of been in that. And then several months ago, while I was being coached, they suggested that I had all of this experience with kids leaving the church. And maybe I would like to work with women that left women who had children that left the church. And my reaction was like, I can't do that. That hurts so much. And that's when, as soon as I felt that, I knew that that's where I'm supposed to be, because you can get through that hurt and come to a really beautiful place on the other side. And so anyway, now I have new revelation that this is where I'm supposed to be, helping people that have left the church. How about you?
Well, I love that. It's so beautiful. And it's such a relevant thing that is happening to so many people that I think that they're really going to relate to those feelings that you're expressing. But I came to decide that I wanted to work with parents that have an LGBTQ child, because when our son came out to us, he wasn't out to anybody else, and except our immediate family. His sisters knew, but that was about it. And I didn't feel like I had anyone to talk to. I felt completely alone. It's not your place, even as the parent, to go and tell anyone else what's going on with your child, to out your child. So it felt like a very private thing. And I really felt like I had nowhere to turn and no one to help process those emotions through. And I remember that feeling so alone. And then it was just very shortly after that I found coaching. And when I did, I didn't even realize what a dark place I had been in, because when coaching came around, it was like shining a flashlight into this dark cave. And it was this light that just attracted me with such an intensity that I had to follow it. And that led me to coach training, and really feel very called by our Heavenly Father to help people who felt like I did at that time, when I felt so alone, so confused, so full of despair.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of pain there. And it's still, I wouldn't say that I don't sometimes feel that pain, but I do feel like the journey that I've been taken on with coach training, and because of Heavenly Father leading in me in the direction that He has, that I have turned into a completely different person than I was before. And that my marriage is better. My relationship with my kids is better. My relationship with God and with Jesus Christ is, I can't even tell you how many times, infinitely stronger than before. And my relationships with everybody in my life are just different now. And like you said, like, it's so much better on the other side. It's completely different. It's hard to go through that process. It's the struggle of a lifetime.
Well, and I would agree, because what you're describing is exactly how I felt too. I felt alone and lonely, because there isn't, I mean, I, I didn't have anybody to talk to either about with my kids leaving the church, and it's painful, and you feel like you kind of stick out like a sore thumb at church when we're talking about the ideal,
Mhm.
and as you're listening, you're like, yeah, not ideal, not ideal.
I'm not the ideal.
I now
Like, I don't fit in anymore. You
I
feel that
don't fit in
really,
anymore.
you feel that really strongly
You
as soon
do.
as you put yourself into that category. Yeah,
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes I think we might put ourselves into that category, but sometimes we're not imagining
that's
that
true. That's
that
true.
that you know that uh, that that we aren't in the ideal world. Could be because with all that change, like you talked about the change that you experienced, we don't see things exactly the same way.
No,
And and you can speak up and voice what your experience is, and it's not it's not the ideal that they're teaching. It's not always welcome.
right, right. And I think that's because, for several reasons, but I think it's not always welcome because it feels threatening.
Well,
I think
yes.
at church it does feel threatening to disagree with something that is not the mainstream.
Yes. Well, and that's because we're afraid. We're afraid, but so are the people at church. They're afraid if they, I think sometimes we all think that if we let, something in, it could happen to us too.
Yeah,
If you entertain the thought, then it could happen to us. And the thing is that it can happen to you with or without the thought. Because
absolutely.
I know that when I got married, you go to the temple, you kneel across the altar, you are creating this beautiful eternal family and you have that picture in your head. Um, and 25 years later, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't the story I had written for myself. This isn't how this story's supposed to go. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, and you, I don't know, I think mothers are different, handle this differently than fathers.
I think they do.
Um, we are just different, but typically as a mother, you put so much time and effort and energy and so much of yourself into raising your kids. And I think you also judge your own value as a mother and your effectiveness by then what your kids are doing once they're making their own decisions.
Yes, they do.
Even
We
though
do.
we
We do
take
that.
that on ourselves.
Yes.
We measure our own value by what our kids are doing or not doing.
Yes. And when you do that, what happens when they're not doing something that you think they should be?
Yeah.
You,
And when you
I,
hear things like no success can compensate for failure in the home,
yeah,
and
no,
then you're looking at like, well, according to what the church is saying, I have failure in my home. And
right.
so then obviously it's been something that I did that was wrong.
Yes. And so the thing is that hearing those things all the time, that's painful. It's hard to go to that place with the idea. But once you start breaking down, what is success
Mhm.
look like in your home? What does failure look like? And really, failure looks like not having connection with your kid.
Oh yeah.
That's failure. It's not whether they're doing not whether they are busy checking all the boxes. It's whether you know how to love them. If you can let go of some of what you thought was supposed to be happening and love them anyway.
Yeah. But I think it's a process to get to that point, especially when you have been taught and believed for so long that success looked different than that.
Yes. Well, and that's kind of why we thought that we would talk what happens for you. Excuse me, when your child starts thinking about leaving the church, because those initial things are so painful.
Oh, for sure.
Because I mean, it's like every alarm bell in your entire body goes off.
Yeah,
You
that
feel,
mama bear comes out in you.
yes, well, you feel like you're under attack.
Uh-huh.
You've got to close forces and fix or attack or whatever it is. It's like we're being attacked. I've got to stop this. And I don't know, for me, I call them thought tornadoes now, where
That's a
it's
good way to
just
put it.
you get in this spiral and you're just like, whoa. And nobody actually should be on the receiving end of those
But
thoughts.
unfortunately, our kids usually are, right?
Yeah, well, the people you love for sure are, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that unfiltered um, anxiety, stress, anger, frustration, um, and really, yeah, being mad. That
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
that's what happens for me in the beginning.
Yeah.
That I just felt like I was everything that I dreamt of was under attack. My entire plan for our family was being threatened,
Yeah.
and I have to prepare for battle. And
Mhm. Well, I noticed this happened for me in 2013. My daughter, who was always extremely strong-willed. I mean, I wouldn't say this was new for her. She was my most independent child and the one that I had the most, the hardest time raising because she was so independent. But she turned 18 and she decided that she was going to make some choices that were not what I agreed with or what her father agreed with, and that we felt were threatening to our, like you said, our family unit, like the picture, the story that we had always told ourselves, like, this is what our family is going to look like, and this is what we're all going to do. And, the choices that she was making were threatening that. And
Yes.
she was leaving that and making her own choices. And I was doing everything that you were just talking about. Like, I viewed that as a threat. I became very defensive. I went on the attack. I started trying to control her, tried. I would say she probably gets her stubborn and independent streak from me. And that's maybe why we butted heads for so many years, because we're so similar. But the more I tried to control and manipulate her, the more she resisted and the more she backed away from me. And I didn't even realize at the time that I was trying to control and manipulate. I thought I was loving her.
Right.
I thought I was just doing what was best for her. I remember many times having a thought of, reading a conference talk and going, oh, she needs to hear this. I just have to share this message with her. And then she's going to realize that, oh yeah, mama, my mother's right, but it actually, that's another form of manipulation, is thinking that thing that I'm going to give her is going to change her mind.
Isn't that so interesting that we do that? I just had somebody share an article with me. It was a political article. It was somebody that's close to me who doesn't like my current political views. And she sent me an article to share with me so that I could be, I don't know, essentially re-educated because what I'm thinking is wrong. And you know what? I didn't take that very well. I didn't appreciate it and I didn't learn from it. And yet we think, I mean, because I've done the same thing. It's like you look through everything you've got. I've sent podcasts, I've sent, articles, all kinds of things. You might enjoy this. You might enjoy this. Yeah, they don't, they didn't enjoy it because I was trying to re-educate their thoughts.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing when something strikes us as, oh, this is a powerful talk, or this is a powerful podcast, or whatever it is that you're reacting to, I think that's meant for you.
Right.
It's
Right.
much more meant for you than it is for someone else. And if you're
Right.
sharing it out of a place of, I loved this so much, do you think you might like it too, is very different than sharing it out of, oh, I think you need to listen to this because you
Right.
could really learn some things. That's a very different place of sharing something.
You have to become very honest with yourself to realize what you're sharing it out of because I a, a lot of things that were coming from me were coming out of anger. And when you're upset and you think that you need to send them something that's going to fix them, um, it doesn't fix them. We already established that, but you think you did it because you love them.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're doing it because you love and care about them. And so becoming very clear and honest about um, what your role in this is. Well, it's not an easy thing
Yeah.
because finding out all the things you're doing wrong, you wanted to fix them. And then you find out that everything that you're doing wrong is maybe way more. You thought what you're doing was Christ-like, and that it was exactly the opposite.
Yeah, but it's so hard to see that in the moment, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's the easy way to go. I mean, you you don't think that you were following Satan, but yes, coercion, force, anger, withholding love, all of those things, those are his tools.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And we don't, but we just think that we're doing it out of love. If you hear some background noise, my husband is drilling. He's like hanging some pictures. So I don't know if that's showing up in the audio. If it
I
is,
hardly
that's what's
hear it.
going on at my house.
Yeah, well, you know what? We all have lives. We have things going on in our house too. I
Yeah.
just heard a beep go off in the back corner, and I'm like, I thought all the beeps were off.
I think it's so interesting that you think that you're doing things out of love. You think that you're doing a service to that person that is questioning or leaving or wanting to leave. But you're actually you're not following Heavenly Father's plan when you do that. I think, but I have to add a caveat to that, because I think it depends on what the feeling is that you're doing it with, like you had mentioned before. Like, are you doing it because you need to think that this person needs to be fixed or shown the right way or dragged back to the path?
Mhm.
Or what, like, why are you, what is your real motivation behind it? Or are you doing it because you love that person? And if you're doing it because you're truly doing it from love, it will feel very different
Yes.
than if you're doing it from thinking that they need to be fixed and that they're wrong and they just need to see the light.
Yes.
Very different experience.
Well, the thing is it ends up being your journey. I think you said right at the very beginning that you're a completely different person. And I would echo that. My relationships with my children are totally different. Um, because because and you mentioned this in early on too, but it took a while for me to get there. I was expecting for their behavior or whatever to make me feel like like I mean, it wasn't even as a mother. It was just like, wow. Basically, I was looking at this is what I created. And so how they turn out, makes me look like I'm this beautiful artist who created this. Look, I created this beautiful, happy family. So it was really all about me and about what I needed. And so the whole journey that I've been on has been 100% for me, teaching me, I think, the skills that Heavenly Father wants me to know to get back to Him. And it's not an easy journey. It's a matter of fact, it's a painful one because my idea of what agency looked and acted like was not right. I mean, all the years that I've taught agency and Sunday school, primary, young women's relief society, we teach it on such an elementary level that it's hard to actually even apply at that level. And it goes so much deeper once you understand that you have to use your agency to become a whole new person
Yeah.
to parent these children.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because an agency is so important to Heavenly Father
Yeah.
that He allowed a third of His children to leave before they ever came to the earth.
Yeah.
And I heard someone say the other day, agency is so important to Heavenly Father that He allows His children to murder each other. He allows us to do terrible things to each other in using our agency, and He doesn't take it away from us. Say, oh no, that's too far. Now you've gone too far. But how often do we as parents just think, even if you hadn't, I've heard lots of parents say it, but I know more think it than say it, when like, oh, this agency for that kid is not a good thing. Like if they just, this is just one of those times where they don't need to have agency,
Yeah.
But Heavenly Father still does not take it away from them, and He doesn't take it away from us. He allows us to make all those mistakes too,
Yes.
in order to move
Yes.
into the person and
Right.
learn the things that we're supposed to learn and
Right.
move into the person that He wants us to be.
Yeah. We need to learn to use our agency. And is it easy or quick?
Not usually.
No, it's not. As a matter of fact, it's painful and it takes a little while. And yet, would you go back to thinking, feeling the way you were before all this?
I was not a happy person. I thought I was. I thought I had everything figured out.
Oh
I
yeah, me
thought that
too.
my life was going the way I wanted it to. But I realized that this is a better way, and I'm glad that I'm not in charge of it. That
Yes.
Heavenly Father's in charge of that.
And that's the thing, is that I just watch my own path. And if I look aside on either side, all I do is I'm checking on Heavenly Father. And it's like, I'm so glad you're watching those other paths,
Yeah.
because it's hard enough for me to stay out to watch my own path.
Oh, for sure.
I want to wander off really easily.
And I think it's not just emotional problems that we get into or emotional distress. It's sometimes those things show up physically
Yes.
too. Like,
Yes.
I don't think I slept for a whole year.
Yes. Yes.
I had trouble focusing and concentrating on things because I would be so easily distracted. I got really fixated on doing something that I thought was going to fix the problem
Yes.
and thinking that that was the solution. What did you find that came up for you?
Me fixing it. Well, so for me, I would say that I, there's so many things that are embarrassing to admit, but I would say that for me, that I struggled with something that's called scrupulosity, which is,
Oh, I've heard of that. But you go ahead and tell us. There's probably people that haven't heard of it.
well, I thought that if I didn't, honestly, I honestly thought if I didn't, anything that bad happened to people was because I hadn't prayed for them hard enough. And so I had my lists of people I was praying for. I was keeping track of how they were doing, is God answering my prayers? And so, um, and it was all control. Again, I thought I was turning that over to God, and it wasn't. It was me trying to exert some control in some way. Can I force God to do something in their life? If I pray hard
Like,
enough.
if I do this good enough, he's going to
Yes.
be bound, right?
Yes.
That
That's
puts you into
that is
instinct.
exactly the thought. He's
Mhm.
promised me this.
Yeah.
If I, and it was probably deeper than that. I was an ordinance worker in the temple, and so I was there regularly. And when I was no longer an ordinance worker, I still went every week for 6 hours, thinking, I'm creating an army of angels to influence my children. If I go and do this work and this work and this work, it's, and again, that is a good place to be. I'm not saying that it's not, but if you're doing it to force your children to use their agency the way that you think they should be, then that's not the right way to do it. I am, when I do that, I am building an army of angels, but all they're going to do is love my child, not
Yeah.
encourage them to do what I think they should be doing.
Yeah. It goes right back to that. Like, what's your motivation behind it?
Yes.
What's the feeling that you have behind what you're doing?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, let's wrap this up.
Okay.
And what do you want to share with us at the end here, Jennifer?
Well, so I what do I want to share with us at the end, Tina?
Well, I know that next time, because this is going to be something that we talk about for a long
Yes.
time. Next time we're going to talk about how to get out of these circles,
Yes.
these things, these emotions that we spin in, these actions that we find ourselves taking, that we just like feel like sometimes we're on a hamster wheel and we're not making any progress, but we don't excuse me, we don't know how to get off. So that's what we're going to talk about next time.
Yes, because something that was news to me is that love doesn't feel like resentment or anger or disappointment. And so if so we're going to learn in the future what love really does feel like and how you
Yeah.
can start figuring that out.
And as life coaches and as people who teach parents about what love really looks like, we find that most parents do not understand love, especially unconditional love, and what that looks like in an everyday situation when your child is doing something that you really disagree with, right?
And yeah, and well, and the reason that we know that most parents don't is because we knew that we didn't.
Because we lived it first.
Yes,
right?
did. Yes, we did not understand love.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're trying to have these wholehearted discussions. We're
Yes.
coming together and having a wholehearted conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
So good to talk to you, Jennifer.
It's good to talk to you too, and I'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.